Welcome all. It's draft night tonight on Primetime Mock, the show where we bring you a new industry draft with special guests throughout the fantasy community every single week. I am your host, Mark Shue, and you can find me on Twitter at Primetime Mock. You can also follow and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Primetime Mock. We're going to switch up the format from last week a little bit. The draft has started already, so we want to get into introducing our guests. Okay, first up, from Under the Helmet and Off the Rails podcast, she is the diva of Devi from Dallas, Texas, Katie Flower. Katie, what's going on?
How's it going? I am so excited to be here tonight. I thank you so much, Mark, for having me, and I'm glad that I got the 101.
I see that, and looks like we got Najee Harris off the board. Talk about him for a second.
Absolutely. He's a little bit of an older prospect, but when it comes to running back, they've got such a short window. I really don't care. If they get through their rookie contract, that's fine with me. He landed in Pittsburgh. He's the kind of running back that's a full bell cow type guy. He can run the ball. He's athletic. He can catch the ball. And at half point PPR, I'll take everything that he's got. And he's going to be consistent fantasy points. He's got a good floor and a good ceiling.
I love it. I love it. All right, next up at the 102 from FTN, he's a senior NFL analyst. D-Bro, Derek Brown from Fort Worth, Texas. What's going on, D-Bro?
Oh, I'm doing good. I'm enjoying this mock already. I mean, you opened it up and gave us slots and stuff, and I was like, well, I'm not going to take the 101, but I got to get the 102. Because it's either Chase or it's Najee. It's one of those guys for me. I love them both in this class.
Yeah, and Katie had to do it to you. She had to jump up and take it from you. She had to take that 101. All right, next up, we've got Laurie Fitzpatrick, or as I like to call her, the queen of clip draw. Laurie, what's going on?
Hey, how's it going? Thank you so much for having me. How are you guys?
We're doing great over here. I'm up only a short drive from you in Allentown, Pennsylvania, so we're state buddies up here. Laurie works for NFL Wire and Draft Shore for USA Today. And Laurie, tell us a little bit about Javonte Williams.
No, I think he's a hard-nosed running back. He's going to break a lot of tackles. He's not super fast, but that's okay. I think he could still get around the edge, and I think he's going to be surprisingly one of the best running backs, in the league. So in fantasy, it's kind of like a no-brainer. If you can break tackles and get extra yardage, that's okay by me. So that's why I went with Javonte.
Excellent. Okay, next up from the Fantasy Nightcap and the FF Astronauts, it's Shane Barret. Shane, how you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great, hanging out here in my daughter's messy basement playroom, just like always.
I'm sitting at my kitchen table, which is also a bit of a mess, so we can relate there. And I left off a couple other places that I contribute because I felt like I was going to take up too much of the space on the Google form. I also do a YouTube show for 14 Personnel called the ADP Report, and then I am a Dynasty writer for Going for Two Live.
Awesome. I love it. All right, and finally, the creator of the Rookie Scouting Portfolio and a senior writer for Football Guys, Matt Waldman. Matt, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is going to be fun. This is my first mock draft of the year and get to do it with some great folks here with Katie and Laurie and D-Bro and yourself and obviously Shane, who we got to do some work before pre-draft talking about some of these guys. So should be fun. I took the 12 spot because I wanted to have some fun with the idea of getting a draft for talent as opposed to draft for need in terms of the at least in the idea of if we were doing this as mocking it up and hey, it might be the only team I have as a returning champion by the end of the year at this point. So I figured that way I can start up at 12.
Well, Matt, we're absolutely thrilled to have you. At first, this show is normally at 8:00, but when Matt Waldman says I can do 9:00, you get Matt Waldman, And I'm just so thrilled to have everybody here, everybody in this room. the beard game in this room has me feeling just a little bit inadequate tonight. But
Same,
we're gonna that's right.
I don't have much of the beard game going.
I was waiting for Laurie or Katie to say something like, okay.
All I know is that we have one former running back in this room, so I'd say the rest of us feel pretty inadequate from that
That's
standpoint.
right.
Yes, absolutely.
Laurie,
So Matt, you're to blame for the 9 o'clock start time then, huh?
I didn't know that, but I guess so. Which
I'll
is
take
funny
credit
because
too.
I was good for 8 o'clock, and then I showed up on the Audible. I was like, these guys changed it to 9, and I didn't remember why. It probably was me. So who knows? I appreciate it.
It definitely was, Matt. Don't worry. I got that all scheduled out. We had at first, I think you were on the Audible, so I said, "Oh yeah, of course. Let's move it to 9." And now that I've got the 9 o'clock spot, I think I might stick to this if I can get some of my other guests to move around. The last week I was here, the last week I did this, I was washing my daughter in the bathtub maybe 25 minutes before we were starting. So maybe I can get some stress relief from moving to 9 o'clock.
Look at me being a prima donna. There we go.
Anytime you want to come on, Matt. Anytime you want to change the time, you can come on. No worries.
Well, I appreciate the invite for sure.
All right, so let's chop up what we've got going on here in the first round of this draft. We had Katie take Najee Harris at 101. Derek took Chase. Go ahead and talk a little bit about Chase, Derek.
I mean, his ceiling is as an alpha wide receiver. Absolutely love him. I mean, I know we only got like one full season. 2019 was a legendary season for LSU. But all the things he put up on tape, played outside, was amazing deep, was amazing in contested situations. I mean, I'm going to shoot for ceiling. The guy is fantastic.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, and then in the draft we had Travis Etienne go and Kyle Pitts. I actually like Kyle Pitts a little closer up to 2 or 3 on a normal draft. If he was there at 3, I might take him. And then Laurie went with Javonte Williams. And then I ended up with Devontae Smith. Now, I got into it with Michelle Majuk last week about Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith. And I was actually on the Waddle side, but I also am willing to embrace a lot of variance in my rookie drafts. I think that I'm willing to be wrong. I'm more of a redraft guy, and I've watched the film. I feel like I have a pretty good sense of these players. But sometimes I'm willing to admit that I'm wrong on some of these things. I think that Devontae Smith had a great year, a great senior season. I know that BMI is something that people have been worrying about, but I also think that he might be just that gigantic outlier. And I'm going to pause for just 1 second and move on because we have a timeout situation right up before Matt Waldman's pick. And I think that I'm going to let Derek come in and take a pick right before Matt Waldman. Derek, go ahead and take someone.
At this point in the draft, oh man, I'm looking at the board.
Who do you want more?
I mean, really,
get your guy, Derek.
There's a lot of
more.
Do it.
I'll go with my wide receiver 4 in this class. I'm going to hop the Moors here. I'm going to go with Terrace Marshall.
Oh, okay.
Oh. Wow.
Here he
I know
comes.
everybody's expecting me to either go Rondell or Elijah there, but I love Terrace. I think his ceiling, his ability to play both in the slot and the outside is fantastic. I know people talk about what he did or didn't do with Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase there, but before he opted out last year, guy was balling out as the number 1 at LSU and catching passes from 3 not great quarterbacks at LSU. So I'm going to give him his credence. He's the top 5 wide receiver in this class for me.
Trey Lance.
Matt, talk about Trey Lance coming off right after Terrace Marshall.
Well, sure. I certainly thought about wide receivers here, and that would probably be the smooth play. I thought about Rondale Moore actually at this point because I really like his fit in Arizona. But from this perspective, you're always thinking about where you're drafting from. So if I'm drafting from 12, that would be the assumption that I'd have a strong team. So if that's the case, if this were, we were in a real dynasty league. So then at that point, I'm thinking, what's the best way for me to leverage talent? And I think, making sure that I'm stockpiled at quarterback and at a point where if I have an aging player or I have a young player who can develop in an offense that I think is going to be a great match to his strengths. And that's certainly the case with Lance in terms of that play action game, what he can do throwing short to deep, his running ability. I think this guy's far more prepared than people, talk about on a regular basis outside of Mark Schofield and maybe myself, who've talked about him, for the past several months. But I'd rather have, I've found that I've had success lately having 4 to 5 quarterbacks who are really good starters and then being able to trade one of them and get the running back of my choice or the wide receiver of my choice later without having to speculate on who that might be in a rookie draft. Sure.
Matt, can you confirm somebody in the 49ers organization owns the rookie scouting portfolio?
I can't confirm that. But I can confirm that according to my buddy Alex Brown, who's the recruiting director at Rice, that the RSP is a publication that he sees week in and week out in scouts' hands in terms of using it as a cross-checking device. So maybe there's somebody from the 49ers within that, but I'll say, they're liking a Sermon and Lance certainly meshes with how I've been looking at it.
All right. Moving on here. Katie took Rondale Moore at 201. Go ahead and give me a little bit on Rondale Moore, Katie.
I was just a bit excited to see him fall in a start one quarterback league. I don't draft for need. I draft for best player available.
Agreed.
And so Rondale Moore, I was hoping Terrace Marshall would fall because I figured Rondale Moore and Elijah Moore would both be gone by now. I've never seen so many quarterbacks in a start one taken. We've already seen 4 off the board. And to me, it's almost like a waste. Like, you cannot sell a quarterback in a start one quarterback league like you can in Superflex. So if Rondale Moore does anything with Kyler Murray, he's going to escalate above and beyond some of these quarterbacks that are being taken very easily, especially if it's start 3 wide receivers. And Rondale is undersized as far as height, but BMI, he's right there. He can squat. I mean, the dude is strong. He is not a prolific route runner. They used him as a gadget player at Purdue, and I understand that, but I like him far better than Kadarius Toney, who I don't know if he's gone yet. I haven't looked at the board recently, but
he's not.
Right. I mean, I think he's a far better athlete and a far better head on his shoulders than Kadarius Toney, and I would rather take him with Kyler Murray rather than Kadarius Toney with Daniel Jones and the missionary position of all coaches, offensive coaches, Jason Garrett. It's like, please, no, thank you. I do not.
Katie, I love you so much.
I do not want any of that. I don't want any of that. So
I love you so much for that comment. I cannot stand Jason Garrett, the ginger clapper. I'm so glad he's gone out of Dallas.
Me too. Me too.
And Mark, if you snipe me again from 2 picks away, I'm gonna be real pissed off.
What can I tell you, Shane?
Now.
I can't. I can't help you, man. I'm gonna be here drafting all night, so get used to it. So after Katie went, Derek went with Justin Fields. Go ahead, Justin. Talk about Justin Fields for a second.
I mean, I know we're drafting in a 1 quarterback format here, but with the top heaviness of this class, I mean, I feel like I easily could have gone Elijah Moore here. With quarterbacks in 1 quarterback format, I feel like if you do have that aspect with the rushing ability, their legs, the Konami aspect, I think that it's fine, like at the top end of the 2nd round, to go with a quarterback that can be that type of difference maker in fantasy. Like if they're going to put up, like if Justin Fields goes out and he puts up some ridiculous type of seasoning with his legs and his arm, and he is a difference maker over like that 2nd tier quarterbacks where you're like, okay, well, there's like 3 points separating 8 guys, then he's going to put you over the top even in a 1 quarterback format. So that's kind of what, even in 1 quarterback, beginning of the 2nd round, I'm fine if I think that there is a game-changing type of quarterback there, and I think Justin Fields has that upside. I think that if you look at all this quarterback class, those top 5 guys, that he has a perfect marriage of not only the rushing ability, but as a passer, that people just still don't give enough credence to that. I put him like he was 1A, 1B with Trevor Lawrence as far as tiers for me in this class. So at Justin Fields at this point, this is the first sniping spot of this draft. I really, really wanted Rondell, but I saw him there, and I was like, Katie's going to take him. I'm not going to get him. It's going to happen. And it did. So I'm happy with getting Fields here, despite the format.
To jump on about the quarterbacks, the one thing that is important to remember is this is a very quarterback-strong class. It's a strong wide receiver class, too, I believe, but it is a very strong quarterback class. And on top of it, we had that report from Adam Schefter a few months back that 18 quarterbacks were expected to change as starter for teams this year. So it is very quarterback desperate. And while there is a lot of talent in this draft, you're right. With the Konami code, with guys like Fields, Lawrence has it too, Trey Lance has it too, they can be those difference makers at quarterback. I don't necessarily think that they are all going to pan out, but in the second round, I think it's a good look to get Justin Fields. All right, and let's move right along. We had Elijah Moore and Zach Wilson taken next. Anybody have any objections to any of that?
I'm really hating the fact that Amon-Ra St. Brown just went. I was hoping. Nice pick.
I love him, and I love him in Detroit.
The Detroit landing spot's great.
I think he's got a path to be. I'm stealing this from Twitter, but I think he's got the path to be Jared Goff's Cooper Kupp in Detroit, and I think he's got a path to be the wide receiver one there, because they brought in veterans that I'm not excited about, and then they've got Quintez Cephas. I think St. Brown has the talent and the ability to surpass all those guys and be Jared Goff's favorite target.
That's true, but I do worry about his long-term outlook, because if Detroit does start to turn it around, when they look to get a new quarterback, I think they're going to look to get a new number one target. So if you have a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown, he might have a good first couple of years, but I would always every year be worried about somebody with higher draft capital coming in or a bigger name coming along into the fray. I mean, do you think any different, Shane? Do you think that he's got that lasting ability?
Yeah, I do. I was surprised throughout the entire NFL draft how after the second round, an early second round, wide receivers seemed to fall from what I had been scouting throughout the offseason. I felt like this was a really strong wide receiver class, and they fell a lot. And I don't know why.
It's probably because there's a strong wide receiver class, so people just let them drop, right?
Yeah.
They figured they could get a good pick later, and then nobody picks up anybody. I think everybody thinks that, right?
Guys, it's Matt Waldman night right now. I swear we've got another timeout right before Matt Waldman. Sooner, Ray, you're out of here. You're not coming back. All right, let's pick somebody else to take. Let's just pick before Matt Waldman. Laurie, go ahead.
Me? What? Little old me? Okay.
We got to go back and talk about your regular second round pick after this too.
Oh my gosh, I don't know who he would want.
Well, take somebody you want. Get your guy, Laurie.
What about the Chuba Hubbard?
Go ahead. Let's go with Chuba Hubbard.
I don't know how to do it.
I got you. Don't worry about it.
Okay, thank you.
I'm doing it for you. Don't worry. Just talk to me about Chuba Hubbard then.
Honestly, I don't really know too much about him. But I know that Carolina, that they also have a pretty good running back there. So I know that there will be some touches that it's going to be split up a little bit. So we'll see how he does. I figured I would pick a running back because I know Matt likes running backs, but.
Well, I don't want Matt to get in your head, Laurie. I want you to take who you want to take.
It's for soon Ray anyway, right?
Yeah, I guess that's true. That's true.
Laurie, I like that pick. Chuba's ridiculously fast, legitimately was on the Canadian track team. And I feel like he's going to be able to spell CMC so that hopefully CMC has a little bit longer durability because he's not having to be used on every single down.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what I was
I also
thinking.
like the cognitive dissonance of Sooner Ray picking up an Oklahoma State running back.
Yes, like that.
That's that I like too, just as an added touch to it.
That's right. I'm gonna pull back to a little earlier in the draft. We ended with Zach Wilson at 204. Amari Rodgers went off the board to Laurie at 205. Let's talk about that, Laurie.
Honestly, he did really well with Trevor because of how much film I watched with Trevor. So I know that if somebody can put it like in his vicinity, he'll be able to grab it. And I think Aaron Rodgers will be there next year or this upcoming year. I know that that's not the popular take here in this chat right now, but I think he's definitely going to be with Green Bay next year.
I hope so.
I hope for this year. I hope that maybe they work something out. I don't know who it was that I was listening to today that said this, but there might be. Oh, it was Andrew Brandt on the Business of Sports podcast with Ross Tucker. He was talking about how maybe that they could come to an agreement that Aaron Rodgers just gets paid a ton of money this year and they let them part their separate ways. Let Jordan Love take over if that's the way it's going to go. I think it's gotten to the point where I think there needs to be a clean divorce in some form or fashion. And both opportunities there, they might not be as happy as they'd like to be, but it might be just a way to make this work for this year. Because you also don't want there to be a toxic relationship this year if you're going to keep him. And if that happens, then you are screwed. I think he will be. I think Rodgers will be here this year. And I think if that's the case, then Rodgers will be a good target for fantasy drafts. I went right next at 206 with Michael Carter. I really like the fit there. I wish he was drafted a little earlier, but I do like the landing spot with the Jets. I like that LaFleur system coming over. And I think that the Jets did a lot of great things to help Zach Wilson. I'm not the biggest fan of Zach Wilson, but I do like that they got Elijah Barrett-Tucker in the first round with a trade up to Minnesota. And I think it's not going to be your same old Jets this year. I don't necessarily think they're going to have an amazing season, but I think they will be a competitive team. And I think Carter can be a big part of that. After that, Kadarius Toney went. He does have the draft capital after all. I'm a little worried, but I do like him as a player. Then Shane went with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Gainwell went, Nico Collins, Chuba Hubbard again, Laurie sniping, Matt Waldman. And then Matt went with Ramondre Stevenson. Talk to me about Ramondre, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of my favorite backs in this class, actually. He's kind of the anti-Hubbard in the sense that he's much slower than Hubbard is, but he has better feet. He understands his blocking schemes and ran a diverse enough set of blocking schemes to actually fit for what the NFL does, and he breaks tackles. He's a guy that, unlike Hubbard, who can run 10 yards downhill and run into a safety headlong and fall backwards. Stevenson's a guy, and I'm not picking on Laurie. I mean, this is more like, she hadn't seen much of him. If she did, she'd know. But when you watch Stevenson, the thing about him is that he knows he's a big back and he's very fluid. And I think his athletic ability will get better. This is a guy that we have to remember who was 250 when he arrived from a JUCO season of 2,000 yards. Goodness. Arrived during a COVID-19 season that's been altered. How much time did he really have in the training facility to remake his body? And how long? And was he just in the weight loss phase, or did he actually get a chance to add some of that quick twitch muscle that he might be able to add as a Patriot? So I like the quickness I saw against SEC and Big 12 defenders. He catches the ball with soft hands. He's the best pass protector of the backs in his class. And listen, James White's leaving next year. Sony Michel, I mean, he's a constant injury concern, and he's gone next year. Rex Burkhead's a consistent injury history. He's a fantasy favorite among people, but I never understood that. And then you have, I love the Fred Taylor comparison from the metrics of him, but that was about it. Not Fred Taylor, Fred Jackson. But really, when you look at Stevenson, his main competition is going to be Damian Harris. And I like Damian Harrison coming out of Alabama, but he became a very cautious runner after that year on the bench. And I just think that Stevenson's a guy that could wind up taking this job in a couple of years, where like by 2022, this is his gig. And if he does add a little quick twitch muscle, he might end up being one of the most compelling backs in this class, as opposed to being a guy who's, a nice contributor on a committee.
I really hope that Ramondre Stevenson hits, if only for the fact that I can start calling him the round mound of touchdowns.
There you go.
And I think that, I really do like where he landed with the Patriots. And from the film I saw, he is just a bruiser, man. He looks like LeGarrette Blount going in there sometimes. He really just knows how, when he's trying to get to the end zone, he can always bowl his way through. I just think that he's going to fit pretty well in that scheme. Yeah,
and like LeGarrette Blount, he's very fluid. So it's not just, the thing about Blount is people don't realize this guy, or they forget that he returned kickoffs in the NFL. You have to have some fluid ability and some quickness to return kickoffs. And I think Stevenson has that kind of quickness, and he's now a svelte 230. So, the fact that he lost that weight on his own to do, it just also tells me about his work ethic.
Yeah.
I'm a svelte 232, Matt.
See, there you go.
We're all a svelte 230, aren't we? All right, and we have broken into the third round. Katie jumped off by taking Dyami Brown. Katie, talk to me.
Sure, absolutely. So I fully expected Matt Waldman to snipe me in multiple rounds. In round one, when he took Trey Lance, I was excited because I got Rondale Moore, but he did snipe me with Ramondre Stevenson. I love the guy, and you guys were saying the LeGarrette Blount comparison, and we know that Bill Belichick loves to run multiple backs. Ramondre Stevenson will be that, definitely the goal line back, and he can catch, he can run. So I know I'm talking about the guy that I didn't get. The guy that I did get, and by the way, I've been saying this for months. This is a very, very weak running back class. You have to have spot guys here and there. The big three, they're well worthy of first round rookie draft picks. But if you're in dynasty, don't draft for need. If you need a running back, trade for a running back. Don't just take a running back because that's what you need. There aren't that many that are going to be anything other than wait and see positional type guys. So I'm going to take Dyami Brown because I think that he's very versatile. He had a great pro day. He's a dynamic downfield threat. And with Washington, yes, it's a crowded wide receiver room now, but you got Ryan Fitzmagic, and he can deliver the ball. Like, he's so underrated. And things changed so much. I think that of the guys to choose from, Dyami Brown was the most dynamic, and I had to take him.
I love it.
Matt Waldman, you just broke my heart.
Really?
Yeah.
Go ahead and talk about it, guys.
Well, why did you like Seth? Oh, because you're an Auburn guy.
Oh, well, there we go.
There. Well, that makes perfect sense. Do you want to talk a little more about it, or do you want me to talk about it?
I'll talk about him, and then you can talk about him.
Let's do it.
But I hated that Seth fell to the sixth round.
Write your love song. Go ahead.
Yeah, I hated that Seth fell to the sixth round. The draft capital really hurts, but analytically, he's there. He had an early breakout season. He had a dominator rating against an NFL receiver with Darius Slayton was there his freshman year. He continued to produce at that level his sophomore and junior years, despite Bo Nix not improving from year one to year two. And I thought he had second-round talent, and he fell to the sixth round. So I think Denver got a steal here. And my only concern is it's just going to be really interesting to see how he fits in with that crowded wide receiver room.
Yeah, well, Cortland Sutton's in a contract year. So the way I look at it is Sutton's in a contract year. Deshaun Hamilton is gone. I don't think he's shown anything. You get KJ Hamler, who's an interesting prospect, but really didn't do a ton last year. And part of that was probably young quarterback play with, Drew Lock and him also acclimating. but then you have Judy, at that point. And Patrick is a nice player, but he's kind of like a Travis Fulgham type.
And he's also on a contract.
Exactly. So by next year, this is Seth Williams' chance to make a good impression. Now, the thing about him as a player, I hear you. I mean, you look at him, and I wrote in my publication this year that if you could just take somebody and say, you know what, I don't know whether he loves football or not, and that's not saying anything against him. It's just that I see that when he plays, he's very inconsistent. Yep. He has some plays that are dynamic, and he makes plays where he just looks like an absolute man out there among boys. And then there's plays where you're like just lapses of concentration, of focus, where the routes aren't where they need to be, the hands aren't where they need to be technically, but you can see that he's capable of it. So when I see that, you ask yourself, is it maturity? Is it him really loving the game to apply himself and be prepared? And if there was a player that I could be inside, just a little bit to say in their head and say, you know what, if you want, you can just turn off for practice and I could feel what it's like to be an NFL player. That would be the guy I'd pick in this draft, because he's got all the athletic ability you need. He's strong. He can go up and win the ball. And then, at the same time, he's capable of being able to bend and run those routes. Yep. And if Aaron Rodgers winds up there, well, that could be really nice, because then he'd have a veteran quarterback who could tell him how routes should be run and what they want from him. And if it doesn't work out that way, they still have Teddy. And I like what Teddy has to offer as a leader and a player who's played with a number of good receivers and can be helpful in that offensive room.
No, I 100% agree with everything you said. I think my favorite part about Seth is that if you throw him a jump ball, to me, it's more of a 60-40, 70-30 ball in Seth's favor than a true 50-50. He's going to go up and win that ball if it's a jump ball.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
He made Bo Nix look good.
Oh, I can't argue with that. And I'm hoping that with the new coaching staff that Bo Nix actually lives up to the talent that I know he's got.
All right, we're going to pull through on the rest of this third round real quick. D-Bro went with Josh Palmer. Real quick about Josh Palmer, D-Bro.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted Diami if he fell to me. Again, Katie got him. But I like Palmer. I mean, right now, I got him hugged up right next to Diami in rankings. For Palmer, I was surprised by the capital a little bit. But for me, we see third-round capital behind his name. Mike Williams is in a contract year. This screams to me they're probably not going to bring Mike Williams back, so he could be the vertical threat, possibly the wide receiver too, because Jared Cook is a free agent after this season. And you're talking about maybe next season he walks in as the wide receiver 2 in a Justin Herbert-led offense. Yeah, I'm willing to take a shot on Josh Palmer as a vertical threat.
I love him in the third round. I love being able to get him in the third round. I will even, again, because I have the wide receivers pushed up pretty far, I don't have a lot of running backs in my second round. And in the third round, still, there are just a ton of wide receivers. I'm often targeting wide receiver, and Josh Palmer is often one of them. Pat Freiermuth went at 303, and in the third round, I'm willing to take him there. I'm actually not really willing to pull the trigger in the second round. I kind of like him in the third, because I really think, especially if you're a believer in Najee Harris, you better believe that Pat Freiermuth is going to be blocking this year. So I think I don't think that he's going to produce as much fantasy value as you really want, even though he is a great player. Dwayne Eskridge next, coming off the board going into Seattle. I do like that he was there. I liked him pre-draft. I like the draft capital there as well. Laurie, go ahead with Trey McKitty at 305.
Yeah, I love him ever since I saw him in the Senior Bowl. I think he's a vertical threat, so I think he'll do pretty well. Honestly, like with the Chargers, and yeah, I mean, he's just a player that I really like.
Yeah, I think in the third round, again, as I tend to have the tight ends pushed back, because I like to think that for most of them, it takes them a good year or two before they really start to acclimate to the NFL and become fantasy producers for us. If you're willing to hold on for that long, that's fine. I'm really only willing to make that bet in the third and fourth round, or in the fourth round more than the third. But I do like what Trey McKitty showed. And again, yeah, with oh my gosh. Debro, help me out. The tight end from
Eric Ebron.
No.
Cook?
Cook, thank you. With Jared Cook.
Yeah, Jared Cook.
I cannot believe that I couldn't remember Jared Cook's name. All right. But this is a new podcast. We're learning every week, right? So we're getting better and better every single time. I'm going to own all my mistakes. Believe me. You better believe that. So with Jared Cook coming, I think Trey McKitty might have a pretty good role going into next year. Then I went with Des Fitzpatrick. I think that, I like Josh Reynolds as the number 2 maybe coming into Tennessee. But I also think Des Fitzpatrick can help make that offense go. They do need more receiving depth, and in the 3rd round, I think he's worth the shot. Amir Smith-Marset went in at 307. And then Shane, talk to me about Mac Jones.
Yeah, I couldn't it was hard for me to pass up the last starting or potentially starting quarterback in the 3rd round in a 1 QB draft. If I'm not getting Lawrence or Fields, I'm probably not taking a quarterback in 1 QB unless it's late like this. So getting Mac Jones at the late 3rd, I'm good with that. I think he'll be a student of the game and fit into Belichick's offense and learn that offense and be able to run it. He's a winner. He's proven that, and he knows how to run an offense. So I think it's just going to be tough seeing value from him, I think, in your first year. So getting him late, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. That's a pretty good argument for me. The 3rd round, if you're looking for a quarterback, they're going to have value for a long time. I think that fit for Mac Jones in New England is great. And why not? Yeah. Cornell Powell went next. Tutu Atwell went. Sooner Ray still wasn't hanging out, so I sniped Matt Waldman with Tylan Wallace. I'm not such a huge fan of him going in the 4th. I thought he fell a little further than he should have. But again, there were so many receivers that I'm also willing to accept some lower draft capital. It's not even really that low in the 4th round. You can find productive receivers who have 4th round capital more than you can, running backs or even.
And you sniped me.
Did I really?
You really did. Yes.
Matt, you've made my night then, I suppose.
So Mark, you're my problem.
I'm your problem?
Because you sniped Matt. Matt sniped me.
That's right. There you go.
The double
There's
snipe.
the source. There's the source.
And here I am sniping you 2 picks ahead, right? We'll work out a trade for Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle. We'll figure that out. All right. Then Matt went with Seth Williams. We already talked about him. Let's go on to Katie at 401 and talk to me about your 4th and 5th round pick, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So I had mentioned earlier that running back is very weak in this class, but at some point they become the value. And I want to have running backs that could potentially be 1 injury away, that have some cachet on their own. And Kenny, I think it's Wangu. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name. I apologize. From Minnesota. He is a very versatile running back. He didn't have a lot of production, so there's question marks, but he's got the size and he has the speed and athleticism. He's going to be backing up Dalvin Cook. So injury away type guy, and Jamar Jefferson backing up DeAndre Swift with a new coaching staff in Detroit. That looks very interesting. I like Jamar Jefferson. Even before the NFL draft, he fell longer than I would have expected. But this year, I call that the basically like the COVID, like if you didn't get a chance to meet him, a lot of the Senior Bowl guys, I think, were propped up. Like Josh Palmer, I think he was propped up. Dwayne Eskridge, I think he was propped up because they were at the Senior Bowl. Coaches got to see him, got to talk to him, got to interview him. And some of these other guys, they never got to see him, never got to talk to him.
Sure.
Right. So it's the COVID syndrome. And I like Jamar Jefferson's tool and skill set. And if he's going to be backing up DeAndre Swift in a new offensive scheme where you've got Jared Goff and a lot of other weapons, let's see it. I want to see it.
And I think there's something to be said about that. On top of COVID happening this past year, there are a lot of players who have an extra year of eligibility. For people, there are players who decided not to play last year that are again, they're not getting propped up. And I think there's going to be plenty of players that you see in that back end where maybe they didn't get the draft capital that others might have overperform. I think we're going to see a very strange number of hits in this draft coming up. Shane, you better make a pick or I'm going to pick it for you, bud.
I was just waiting.
All right. Yeah. But no, I agree. I really did like Jamar Jefferson coming out. And I thought that he's a little bit smaller of a back, but I don't think he can't be a good contributor. I said this last week. I don't like that he's behind DeAndre Swift. But again, if he goes down, I think Jefferson can perform. He really can. D-Bro, give me your last two.
Yeah, so I went with Hunter Long here. I love the fit in Miami. Gesicki's going to be a free agent after this year. I think this signals that he's not back. Will Fuller's on a 1-year deal. Looking for guys in sneaky spots. And Hunter Long, I mean, he popped at Boston College, man. You look at the last 2 years, all tight ends at collegiate level, 25 or more targets. Dude was top 20 both years in yards per route run. So I think the talent is there. He got the draft capital, getting drafted inside the top 3 rounds. This is why I talk about sleepers ADP. And I'm like, I'm trying to find these deeper guys in the draft. If I could have found him before I took the pick, I went with Mike Sarchin, and I'm probably butchering his name. I always butcher his name. But he was a fantastic prospect coming out of Charleston, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, big dude, 6'5", over 200 pounds, 226, I think. So like him, even though he went in the 7th round of the Colts, if I would have seen him in the ADP beforehand, I would have gone Simi Fehoko, was also in the discussion here. Sure. Like him, size, speed, specimen, went 5th round. Love both those guys. And if you're going to get them later in the 5th round, we're all throwing darts here. I want to go with athleticism. I want to go with size, speed. I want to go with guys that don't fit a mold. And if they get a chance, can they perform? And both of those guys this late fit the mold for that.
Yeah, I love it. All right, moving on. We had Anthony Schwartz and Jared Patterson go to Pistol Pete. We had Elijah Mitchell and Marquez Stevenson go to Mr. One-Hander. Laurie, talk to me about your last two.
She had to hop off, Mark.
Oh, she left. Oh, I forgot. I'm sorry. Okay.
Shout out to Pistol Pete, though. I love his draft.
Yeah, he had a great draft. Again, I think Kyle Pitts at 4 is just printing money at that point. I think that Zach Wilson can make something happen. And yeah, the back end of his round 4 and 5, he made some pretty good picks in Mitchell and Stevenson. Laurie ended up with Jonathan Adams Jr. And I actually not sure who that is. Marlon
Williams.
Marlon Williams. Can anybody talk to me about either of those players?
Sure. Adams is a guy who is long, tall, quick enough, can really leap, has a great catch radius, has some makings to be a pretty decent route runner. It's a nice late pick for a guy who has plenty of upside. Athletically, he tracks the ball very well. He's just, he's not a complete route runner at this stage. I would say he's a better version of what Equanimeous St. Brown, the overrated player out of Green Bay, was touted as being. I think, Adams has a better chance of being a contributor on that end. And then when you look at Marlon Williams, who was at UCF, if that was who she was looking at, he's a runner after the catch. He's a guy that can win the ball tight. He's someone that, again, also will have to get a little bit better as a route runner. Not a top end athlete in terms of, the size speed combo, but he's quick enough for the NFL. It's just a matter of developing his route plans and being someone, whether he's going to be a flanker or an inside guy. He's probably going to be more of a contributor than he will be a starter ever. Sure.
All right, next up, I went with Khalil Herbert at 406. I liked his tape at Virginia Tech. He had transferred there. Didn't have a season last year, but had great film. And in the 6th round, I think he might be one of those guys who pops up higher than we expect. He could probably perform pretty well maybe on special teams early on. I think that, if David Montgomery ever goes down, I think he can show something as well. And at this point in the draft, I think that's exactly what you're looking for. Same thing with Tommy Tremble. I like him as an option for tight end for Carolina. They don't have anybody there right now. I think he's a pretty decent player, can catch some balls, and I think he can contribute as well. Hunter Long, Trey McKitty, Tommy Tremble. I'm looking for all those tight ends in the 4th, 5th round, depending where they go. Then we had Shane. Go ahead and give me your next two.
Yeah, I had Brevin Jordan at 408 and then Tamorrion Terry at 508. Brevin Jordan, this was a smash draft for me because I was considering him at 308. I think he's going to win the tight end position in Houston because they have Jordan Akins, and I can't remember who the other tight end was there last year.
Farrah Brown is there.
Yeah.
Now.
Well, there was another one though.
Yeah, Fells, but he's gone. He's
Fells gone.
Thank you. And one of the two of them was like 34. I can't remember if it was Akins or Fells, but I think Jordan is going to come in and give them a receiving option at tight end that they haven't really had in a while. So I love that landing spot for him, even though he went later than I was expecting. And like you guys said, we're throwing darts here, and at tight end, why not throw a dart and have someone that I can stick on my taxi squad? If he performs, cool, I'll pull him off. If not, he can wait a year or two like most tight ends do, and then he'll be ready. And then Tamorrion Terry, this guy has the physical tools, but then just has the concentration drops so bad. And I was debating between him and Shi Smith, who went the pick after me in the 5th round. And I just went with Terry just because of the athletic potential.
Yeah. And again, at this point in the draft, you're just looking for that kind of upside, that athleticism, that whatever it is that's going to help them break in and be able to contribute, right? And it wouldn't be Sooner Ray if his pick wasn't up without a timer. So we're going to have Matt Waldman sniped one last time for old time's sake. Shane, go for it, man.
Demetric Felton.
Okay, Demetric Felton. Talk to me about him.
I just picked him because he's the running back out of Cleveland, and because Matt and I connected over being Cleveland Browns fans, I figured I'd try and snipe him that way. That backfield's going to be crowded with Chubb and Hunt, obviously. But, again, you're looking for potential upside. If either of those guys goes down, Felton comes in to be the 3rd or 2nd guy and gives whoever is not hurt the ability to get spelled a little bit. So I like the pick. He was kind of a sleeper guy for me later in the drafts. Didn't love the landing spot, but I'll take him here just to try and snipe Matt.
And Matt, how about you? Those last two?
Sure. Jalen Darden is someone who gets to sit behind some of the best wide receivers in the league, and Evans and Godwin and Brown and Scotty Miller. And he'll make the team. He's basically an unbelievably quick player who has the downfield speed and the ability to win the ball. He's a decent route runner already. He'll play with Tom Brady at least for another couple of years. And, Godwin's on a 1-year deal. Brown's on another 1-year deal. He's going to get a chance to play at some point, and he'll be in a room with guys that he can really acclimate. So I like the opportunities there. And really, there's a lot of talent left on the board for me, like Frank Darby with Atlanta, wide receiver there, Jalen Camp with Jacksonville, who I would have loved to have picked, but I realized that I had to pick a tight end for this particular draft at the end. But even so, Zach Davison, who's with Minnesota, I think he could be the best tight end in this class by the when it's all said and done. Well, not the best. Kyle Pitts, if you want to count Kyle Pitts as a tight end. I don't really. He's a Jimmy Graham type. He's a pass catcher. That's all that he is. And I love Freiermuth. But after that, Zach Davidson's very fluid, very quick, a lot like Adam Troutman, small school guy who's a lot better than you realize, and you're about to find out with Troutman if you hadn't already. So he's still there. But Jacob Harris being picked as a wide receiver / tight end allowed me to cheat a little bit because I watched him enough that I saw he's got terrific athleticism, 6'5", in the 220 pound range, he could play wide receiver and he could be that deep threat. He gets behind people easily now. It's just the route running now at this stage of his game. He's thinking through it, so he looks slower than he actually is. But this is a guy that played soccer at UCF before walking on and becoming a special teams guy, and he just learned the wide receiver position. So the fact that he's already made the strides he had, and they need a downfield threat for Matthew Stafford down the line who isn't going to blow away like a kite and Tutu Atwell. As I've kind of joked around with him being pretty light at 148, I think someone that Matthew Stafford can, give contested, opportunities to in a couple of years. Harris could be that guy. He could be a very quick learner. So, especially with the fact of having guys, if we had free agency, Davidson would be a guy in a main priority, or Noah Gray or Kyle Granson, if Granson didn't already leave the board here.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to try and wrap this up with the last. That was the last pick of our draft. But I want to wrap up some of these other names that we see out here. Is there anybody that somebody not in this room maybe took that anybody wants to talk about and just give us a little preview on?
I mean, I'll take the mic here. I was really hoping Jared Dokes fell to me. I was really hoping that he fell to me at this the 5th round pick, but he didn't. He goes to Miami. I know he didn't get the capital. I mean, 7th round guy, but he's got the size. I think he's got enough speed. And surprisingly, even though he doesn't have the counting stats, when he was called upon in Cincinnati in the passing game, very fluid, soft hands. I think that for a Miami coaching staff that has shown they don't care about draft capital. If you play well, you can see the field, you're going to play. I think he could surprise some people, or for a guy that went in the 7th round being 5'11", 228, I think he's got enough burst. He's a guy that I want to get in as many drafts as possible.
Yeah, and Miami has really shown. I mean, even last year with two undrafted guys that they can produce in that backfield without having high draft capital. I mean, Dokes will have the highest of who's there. So it might be what is it, 7-11 that I think he was taken or something like that. But yeah, he definitely could perform for them. And again, we're looking for upside back here. Anybody else have players that they were seeing on this board, or maybe somebody that was off the board that didn't go? I know that Debro was talking about Simi Fehoko, Matt about Frank Darby and Jalen Camp. Anybody else have any player that maybe they either went drafted that we want to chop up for the last couple minutes, or that they wish were drafted?
Anthony Schwartz for me.
Anthony Schwartz, go ahead.
Yeah.
We'll get to Katie right now.
I was going to go there and ask your thoughts about him if you didn't go there.
Yeah. Like I said, I got the shirt on. I kind of was hiding it on purpose, and I still got sniped on both the Auburn guys. I love the Anthony Schwartz pick for Cleveland. As a Cleveland fan and as an Auburn fan, I think he's going to fit into that offense to give them something that they don't really have, which is a gadgety player, but someone who is also fast enough to take the top off the defense. Another legitimately world-class track athlete who broke the record for the 100-meter dash when he was in high school, I think twice. He broke his own record. He is just ridiculously fast. I love Auburn. I love Auburn receivers, but they have a history of not developing them. So my biggest concern with both Schwartz and Williams is hoping that they get in and they learn and develop quick enough. Because they both are extremely talented, in my opinion, in different ways. And Schwartz going to Cleveland is a perfect fit. I was really hoping I was going to get one of the Auburn guys at 408, and I didn't get either of them. So that kind of gives me an idea of like when I might need to take them, especially because my home league is from Alabama. So they're either going to be taking Auburn or Alabama guys, probably ahead of when they should. But yeah, Schwartz in Cleveland is a great fit for me. Matt, I'm going to ask you, because I know you're a Cleveland fan, what do you think of Schwartz in Cleveland?
I think that the thing with Cleveland's offense is that you're really looking at a team that, you likes to stretch the field horizontally, so you can get Schwartz available on some of those RPO type of plays.
Mm-hmm.
You can use them on end arounds and things like that, fly sweeps, and of course in the deep game, when you do spread the field. Though I would say I like it more from a football perspective than I do from a fantasy perspective.
Definitely.
Because from a football perspective, he'll be able to help out from the field stretching standpoint. From a fantasy perspective, you're looking at really a lot of 2 wide receiver sets with 2 tight ends, often 3 tight ends with 1 wide receiver, with Cleveland's run game, and also using those types of crossing routes there. But the type of routes I like to use as well will be simple enough that you're not making too many demands on Schwartz early on in his career to make an impact.
Katie, you seem to be ready to jump in with a player that you like in this last round. Can you want to give me that one?
Sure. Somebody that wasn't drafted that I think should be on people's radar. And just to put a bow on the Anthony Schwartz thing, as far as wide receivers, yes, when you get into round 3, 4, 5 of your rookie drafts, dynasty, you're dealing with a lot of dice rolls. Fast is great, but to be a good route runner, you got to be able to sell the route. You got to be able to stop and start. Devonta Smith is the epitome of a guy that can stop and start, and he's got the greatest breaks. I don't know that Anthony Schwartz will ever become a great route runner. So as Matt Waldman pointed out, he's going to be better to the Cleveland NFL football team than he will be to your fantasy roster, more than likely.
Totally agree.
Right. So, that's just basic math. But the guy that I think that slipped through the cracks, and maybe because some of these quarterbacks went, Chris Evans, Cincinnati, a lot of doubt on Joe Mixon, whether or not he can handle the load. Giovanni Bernard is gone. And this dude is 210 plus. He is athletic. He's got a receiving profile. Later day 3, he's somebody. When I look to the later rounds, I look to the running backs that are 1 injury away, somebody that can contribute either right away or an injury away. They're more definitive sometimes than the wide receiver. By the time that September rolls around and I need to make my final roster cuts, it's easier to justify the running back over a wide receiver in most cases.
Yeah, and again, in round 4 and 5, as you get back there, I think that's a good spot to take a running back. I think that 2 and 3 area, unless you have a guy in your spot, if you can find Trey Sermon in the 2nd round, you take him. If you can find Michael Carter in the mid to late 2nd, you can take him. Ramondre Stevenson, late 2nd, early 3rd. But, after that, I'd be taking receiver. And then the back end of this draft, that's when I would be taking those picks with players that have the ability to get onto the field 1 injury away and have the talent to produce when they get there, because that's all you can really hope for. I think you're better off going that way than always going deep receiver in this later round. I'd rather push those a little farther up. And that concludes our draft. Thank you everyone for coming. Let's just get a rundown. Katie, tell me where everyone can find you.
I am at FF_Skyler399 on Twitter. You can find me on Under the Helmet and Off the Rails Podcast Weekly. I'm also a guest on many different shows. I am the diva of Devi. If you have any Devi drafts coming up, just hit me up on Twitter. I'd be happy to help you. And just look for my Twitter content. I'll be retweeting it as I go.
All right. Shane, give it to me.
Yeah, before I get going, Katie, I loved your pick of Jamar Jefferson.
Thank you.
Didn't get to say it earlier, but I love that pick. So you can find me on Twitter at FFShaneB. I'm the co-host of the Fantasy Nightcap, which you can find at Fantasy Nightcap. We are a fantasy football astronauts podcast, where I'm also the social media coordinator. And then I'm a writer for Going for Two and the ADP report co-host for 14 Personnel. So I'm wearer of many hats.
Great. And did you have a charity or local that you wanted to plug?
Yeah, so I actually run a charity tournament inspired by Scott Fishbowl. It's called Polly's Playoff. You can find the information for that on my pinned tweet on my Twitter account. Basically, it's a $10 donation directly to mine or my wife's team page for the Walk to End Alzheimer's, and that is what the tournament is for. We call it a tournament to end Alzheimer's.
Excellent. Matt, let everyone know where they can find you.
MattWaldmanRSP.com is my site. You can find the rookie scouting portfolio there, which is a pre-draft and post-draft publication. And it's available every year, April 1st, and then after the first week of May, and the newsletter comes with it from June through December. You can also check out my work on my YouTube channel, Matt Waldman's RSP Film Room, approaching 600 videos with various guests ranging from fantasy analysts to football analysts to former coaches, current players, all the like, breaking down the game. And footballguys.com. I've been a staff writer there since 2009. And, the RSP has been given to a charity called Darkness to Light since 2011 or 2012. I don't remember which. But Darkness to Light is an organization devoted to training people so that they can prevent sexual abuse of children, as well as know how to deal with it when it does unfortunately occur, because oftentimes the damage is compounded, if not worse, for many people, as they would tell you, when people don't believe them, people in authority don't believe kids for when they report it. So they train civic groups, individuals, government organizations, businesses. They've worked with Penn State after their scandal. They've worked with Michigan State, and they've had and they do fantastic work. And we give about $5,000 each year to them. And I've been doing that, like I said, since about 2011.
That's great. And I know they do online trainings. I was actually looking into maybe doing an online training this summer. I'm a music teacher, so it is helpful to have that kind of training under your belt. Derek, hit me up with all your information.
Yeah, you follow me on Twitter at @DBro_FFB. My content is spread across all of FTN, so FTN Fantasy, FTN Bets, FTNDaily.com. Doing a lot of Dynasty work right now. Got a 1QB rookie mock draft already out. Got this Superflex version of that coming out Friday. Check out my podcast with my co-host Adam Pfeiffer, Fade the Chalk. We're doing 4 to 5 episodes every single week. Thank y'all for having me, man. This was a blast. Absolute blast. And I do want to get up one small, the charity that really rings home to me. Before doing all of this football stuff full time, I was a pediatric cancer nurse for 13 years, and I actually hosted one of these events. If you go to stbaldrick's.com, you can actually host your own event where you can raise money, shave your head to raise money for cancer research, pediatric cancer research. It's fantastic. I hosted one of these events in Baton Rouge, Louisiana about 6 years ago, and we raised over $15,000 for pediatric cancer research. So, fantastic site. If you get set up with them, you have to pay nothing. They will send you banners. They will send you cups. They will send you every single thing you need to host an event to raise money to help kids fight cancer and to find cures for it. So, it's a fantastic organization.
That's great. Well, thank you, everybody. We had a great time here. All of you are welcome back at any time. And everybody else out there, feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Primetime Mock. You can join our sleeper channel as well, Primetime Mock Drafts, where we do drafts every single day of the week. Thank you very much. Have a good night.